Good afternoon, children. In today's class, we are going to study the next concept is factors affecting friction. See, in last class, we have studied what is the cause behind understanding for friction. Uh, Now, in today's class, we are going to study what are the factors which will influence or affecting the friction. Okay, so it has been found by experiments that the friction between two surfaces depend on two factors. Understanding depends on completely two factors. That is also we have proved by experiments. Even we will do that activities also in our laboratory. So the first factor which will affect friction is the nature of the two surfaces. That is the first factor. What it is? The nature of the two surfaces. So what does it mean that? So either it will be smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces. It will be either smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces. Understand? Yeah, otherwise either one surface is smooth or another surface is rough. Like that also it will be. So the next factor which will affect friction is the force with which two surfaces are pressed together. Understanding? What is that? The force. Understanding? With the force with which two surfaces are pressed together. Which two surfaces are pressed together. These are the two factors which will affecting the friction. Now, the force of friction, however, does not depend on the amount of surface area. It is not depend on. It not depends on amount of surface area. So the surface area of the two surfaces doesn't matter because friction is not depending on it. So it is only depending on the type of surfaces and which type of surface, which type of force. Understanding the force with which the two surfaces are pressed together. Understanding? So it's not depend on amount of understanding a surface area, amount of surface area of surfaces of two objects, so which is in contact with each other. Okay, so now we will study how the friction depends on the nature of two surfaces as well as on the force with which the two surfaces are pressed together. So let me come to the first one. So what is the first one? Dependence of friction on the nature of two surfaces. Okay, so let me take for the first one is what? Dependence on the friction. So we'll study the first one is what? Dependence of friction on the nature of two surfaces. Dependence of friction. Okay, on the nature of two surfaces. Nature of two surfaces. Are you able to understand it? So now we'll see, we will study in detail and we'll do one small activity also. So let me come to, we know that friction is not the same for all the surfaces. That is the first thing. Friction is not at all same, not same for all the surfaces. So it will be varying from surface to surface. So friction depends on the smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces which are in contact with each other. Are you able to understand? So what I'm saying, friction depends on the, purely it is depends on the smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces which are in contact with each other. Okay, so when the two surfaces are in contact, understand, when the two surfaces in contact are smooth. Let me imagine when they are in smooth, the two surfaces which are in contact each other, they are smooth, then the friction between them will be small. Understand? It means it is less. Because why? Because the interlocking of smooth surfaces is less. That is the reason why the friction is also less. So as the degree of roughness of the two surfaces in contact increases, means the roughness is increasing in between the two surfaces which are in contact each other, then the friction is also increases. So the roughness of a, understanding the interlocking will be increasing when the roughness is increasing. So the roughness increases means friction is also increasing because both are directly proportional to each other. So if the roughness is decreasing means friction is also decreasing. So that is the reason why if the surfaces, two contacting surfaces are in smooth, then the friction is also less. If the two surfaces are roughness is increasing, the degree of roughness, understand, the degree of roughness of the two surfaces in contact increases, the friction also increases. Okay. So, and when the two surfaces are in contact are very rough, understand, very rough, then the friction between them will be very large because the interlocking of very rough surfaces is too much. So their frictional force is very, very high. So we can study the dependence of friction on the nature of surfaces by performing some activities. Okay, so now let me see what is that activity. So let you please note down that is activity 1. Okay, so now let me comes to some activity. So why we are doing this activity? To prove that the frictional amount of force, the friction on the nature of surfaces by performing different kind of activities. How much friction it will be present in between the different kind of surfaces. So you just keep heading that this is activity 1. So let me see. You can do this activity also with the help of spring balance. So now in morning class I have taught you that if the spring balance is vertically, if you're doing, we are used to measure the weight. If it is horizontally, we used to measure the force applied. So now for activity 1, what we have to do that, place a brick on the floor. You just imagine that this is the floor. This is our floor and I'm placing a big brick. I'm placing a big brick on the surface. Okay. Now, big brick I have placed it here. What I'm saying, place a brick on the floor. Now, tie a string or else a strong thread around the brick. So I'm tying some kind of a thread. A strong thread I am trying. Okay, understanding. So now, what I'm saying, with the help of a string or a strong thread around the brick and connect it to the hook of a spring balance. So we know that hook we have to connect after tying the thread, tying this brick with a thread. We have to connect this for the help for the hook of a spring balance. Hook of a spring balance. Now apply. So we know that here what it is happening. Here what is happening? It is a spring balance. So now, so spring balance will be like it will be present. So in last class I have taught you that how it will be present. So here it will be force. Understanding? So here it is having some kind of thing. So okay. So like this it will be present. Now, are you clear? So let me imagine this is our spring balance. Now with my fingers, understanding. So what is going to happen? Apply a pulling force, understand, with the help of this hanger, apply a pulling force to the brick by pulling the other end of spring balance by hand till the brick just begins to slide or moves slowly on the floor. So what we have to do? First we have to place a brick on the floor and tie with some kind of a string or some kind of a thread and join the thread for the one side of a spring balance, that is called as hook, and from the other side you just try to pull that spring balance till that you just observe that movement of the brick will start. Understand? So it just needs to move. The brick will be initially it is in rest. So if you apply some kind of force, then you can see that the spring will start expanding. So at certain condition, this brick will start moving. So when if you trying to pull like this, if you observe that brick will start moving, then you just stop. Means when it will start moving slowly on the floor, Okay, brick begins to slide or move slowly on the floor. Here you just note down the reading on spring balance. So if you observe here, the reading of spring balance, something will be present here. Okay, so the extension of spring you can clearly see here. So, and note down the reading on spring balance when the brick begins to slide or moves slowly. So this reading of spring balance will give us the what? Magnitude of force. Will give us magnitude of force. So that is the required force, okay, to create or to pull this brick from on the surface of the floor. Okay, if you apply the less than that force, then what is going to happen? Then frictional force is dominating, so this brick cannot move or cannot slide on the surface. So this reading of spring balance will give us the magnitude of force of friction between the surface of floor and the surface of brick. Means this amount of force is the frictional force which is present in between this surface and the brick. Understanding? So which are in contact with each other. Okay, now let us now wrap a piece of polythene around the brick and repeat the same activity. Okay, so just to tie the polythene cover for this, and again you tie the thread, and again you do the same activity, first without any kind of polythene cover. Now here the first condition case, okay, you just wrap a piece of polythene cover, and you just place on the floor and tie the thread, and again the same process. So repeat the same process. Then we will note that spring balance reading when the polythene wrapped brick, okay, just begins to slide on the floor. Okay, now we will find that this reading of spring balance is smaller than the first reading of spring balance. Okay, so without polythene cover we can see that. So let me imagine that force will be 10 newtons. Understand? But now after tying the polythene bag, if you try to pull, then you can see that when the brick will start moving slowly, sliding, then that force definitely it will be less than the without polythene cover, first case. Okay, so now we will find that this reading of spring balance is smaller. Okay, here it is applied force is decreases. Understanding? Smaller, I will say what is the reason also, smaller than the first reading of spring balance, because when there was no polythene around the brick in first case, so it is indicating what? Indicating that the force of friction has decreased. Are you able to understand? So from this observation, we can conclude that wrapping up polythene sheets makes the surface of brick smooth, due to which the friction with the floor decreases. Are you clear? So first case we have got, let me imagine, the force will be 10 newtons. Now after trying the wrapping with the polythene paper, so here brick is not directly contacting with the floor, so the roughness is decreases, so automatically the applied force is also, frictional force is also decreases. That is the thing which we have observed. Like that, you go for another case again. So remove the polythene sheet from this brick again. Okay, now again wrap it, just jute cloth, jute bags or jute cloth. So just instead of polythene bag, you just wrap with a jute cloth around the brick and repeat the same activity again as usual. So we note that the spring balance reading when the jute wrapped brick just begins to slide on the floor. Okay, so in this case we can find that reading of spring balance is greater than the first reading. Understanding? First reading of spring balance, because when nothing was wrapped around the brick, it is having some kind of, so let me imagine this is, now if you wrap with a jute bag, then what is going to happen? The roughness is increasing, because jute is very rough, very hard actually. So due to wrapping with a jute bag, then the roughness between these two surfaces is increasing. So automatically what is going to happen? So the force is also, the frictional force is also increases. So it is indicating that the force of friction has increased. Okay, so from this observation we can conclude that wrapping of jute cloth makes the surface of brick more rough, due to which the friction with the floor increases. Understanding? So first case without anything, just brick. Second case with the polythene, so friction is decreasing because polythene cover making the smooth. Again, if we'll make with, instead of polythene wrap with a polythene cover, if we'll make with a jute bag, again the friction in between the surface of the floor and brick is increasing, because jute is also very rough, very hard substance or rough. Okay, so from this activity we can learn that when the surface of brick is made more smooth by wrapping polythene sheet, the friction with the floor is decreasing. Understand? Because of polythene cover is very smooth. So otherwise we can say that when the surface of brick is made more rough by wrapping with jute cloth, then the friction with the floor is increasing. Understanding? So from this we can say that the friction depends on the nature of the two surfaces. So from this activity we can conclude that the friction in between the two surfaces depends on the nature of the two surfaces. That is what the friction depends on the smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces. That is the most important thing. It is depend on the smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces. This is the activity 1. So like that we are having one more activity that we will study in the next class. So with this I am going to end this today's class. Thank you.